Hi, I'm Steven Duncan. I'm here to talk about ISO today. ISO is one of the three main settings in a camera that you can use to manipulate what you're taking photos of. The other two were f-stop and shutter speed. The great thing about ISO is that it's probably the most simplest setting you can change in the camera, because ISO is, simply speaking, the sensitivity of the sensor inside the camera, or the film that you're putting inside your film camera. Great thing about digital cameras is that you can adjust the ISO on the fly, whereas on film cameras it's linked to the physical film that you put in the back of the camera, so you can't change it while you take photos. Now, I mentioned f-stop and shutter speed because f-stop, you are also thinking of the depth of field when you're taking photos. So when you up the f-stop, you're actually making the depth of field a lot longer, and lower the f-stop, you're making it a lot shorter, which means that the composition that you're taking a photo of will actually change while you're changing the settings. But it does let in more light or cause the exposure to change. Same with shutter speed. If you change the shutter speed down, you're actually making the more light coming through the camera. Whereas you up the shutter speed, you're actually making it less light coming through the camera. And that's another way to manipulate the exposure of your cameras, of your photograph. But the thing is with shutter speed is that if you lower the shutter speed, then anything moving will start blurring. Whereas if you up the shutter speed, moving stuff will be pin sharp. Depends what you want. Whereas ISO, it's the most pure way of doing it because it just changes the sensitivity of the sensor. Okay, let me give you an example of what I mean. I've set my camera up here, lovely shot here with the tree, illuminated by the sun, and I've got a low ISO of about 200. Okay, here you go. It's a lovely moody scene now because I've got a very low ISO, the sensitivity of the camera is not very high, the shadows are quite dark, and the only light that's coming through to the sensor is what's reflecting off the lovely orange tree. Okay. It's a moody photo, and that's something that you might want. But let me give you an example of what happens when I up the ISO. Let's up it from 200 to 600. Or 640. Here we go. You can see now that the shadows are more exposed. You can see more detail in the shadows. That's because the sensitivity of the sensor in the camera is more acclimated to the shadows. You can actually see more detail because the sensitivity is higher. In the moody photo, the shadows aren't there. In the higher ISO photo, the shadows are there because the ISO is higher. Let's move the camera a little bit, and I'm going to take a photo in this dark, shadowy part of the forest here. Okay. I'm going to take a photo with the sun coming through the trees. Now, because it is a very dark spot, you'd expect that the photo to be very, very dark. I'm going to put the ISO down again to 200. Let's see what happens. Focus on that far tree over there. Okay, it's extremely dark. Okay, it's pretty much unusable. Okay, so let's up the ISO. Let's put it right up to 800. And here we go, much more usable. Still a little bit dark, so let's up the ISO even more. Now, I wouldn't usually do this, but for this lesson, I just wanted to demonstrate what ISO does. I would usually be manipulating the shutter speed or the f-stop to create more light coming through. But in this case, the ISO has made the image a lot more palatable. Okay, I'm going to come over here. So here's the original image of the ISO of 200, and here's the new image of ISO, what was it? It was 1250. Okay. You can see the obvious difference without changing any other settings. Changing the ISO up allows you to take photos in much darker spaces, and it's a lot easier to understand compared to f-stop and shutter speed. Now, in the following lessons, I'll be talking about f-stop and shutter speed, because they are the main three settings on the camera that you can use to manipulate a photo. But hopefully that makes you understand what ISO does a little bit better. Thank you.